The galaxy was old, older than the memory of most races. For thousands of years, the great alien empires ruled in silence and order. They believed in one law above all others: purity. Every race that wished to join the Council of Stars had to prove its worth. They had to survive the purity test. The purity test was not a game. It was a brutal trial, a contest of body, mind, and soul. The test was designed to break the weak and crown the strong. Only the pure races were allowed to rise in power. Only the worthy races could stand equal among the galaxy's rulers, and for as long as the test had existed, no human had ever passed. When the name of a human was called, the crowd laughed. Thousands of alien voices filled the arena, mocking the strange species from the small blue world. Another human? Pointless. They will fail, as always. Impure, weak, fragile. The judges, tall alien beings with glowing eyes, looked down with cold amusement. To them, this was entertainment. To them, the human had already lost. And yet one human stepped forward. His name was Ethan Kane. He was not the strongest of his people. He was not the smartest. He was not chosen by his government, nor blessed by any alien ally. He was here only because fate had pulled his name. But as he walked into the arena, Ethan's steps were steady. His eyes did not show fear. He knew the truth. The test was not fair. It was designed to make humans fail. The obstacles were twisted. The rules bent. The game was rigged before it even began. Still, Ethan did not turn back. The arena was massive, a circle of steel and stone floating in the void of space. Strange banners of alien empires waved above, glowing with colors no human eyes had seen before. At the center of the arena was the entrance to the trial, a great black gate taller than any building on Earth. The gate opened with a roar, spilling mist into the arena floor. The first chamber of the purity test was revealed. A whisper spread across the crowd. Watch the human die quickly. Yes, this will be short. They never last more than a few minutes. Ethan took a breath and stepped into the mist. The gate closed behind him with a thunderous echo. Inside, the air was thick. The walls glowed with alien symbols. The first challenge waited. It looked simple. A bridge. A thin, narrow path stretched across a bottomless pit. The other contestants, giants with claws, lizards with wings, machines of living steel, would cross with ease. But for a human, with weak balance and fragile bones, this was a death sentence. Ethan looked down into the endless dark. One step wrong, and he would fall forever. He touched the stone with his boot. It shook under his weight. The bridge was not stable. Another trick. Another trap. The alien judges smiled from their thrones. The human will fall. But Ethan did not move quickly. He crouched low. He spread his weight. He moved one step at a time, steady as a hunter in the woods. His arms stretched wide for balance. His eyes stayed forward. The bridge trembled. Rocks cracked. Dust fell into the pit. Step by step he moved. Slow. Careful. His heartbeat pounded like thunder, and then he was across. The crowd went silent. For the first time in years, a human had passed the opening challenge, but the test was not over. The second chamber opened. The walls twisted into a maze of mirrors and light. Strange sounds echoed from all directions, roars, whispers, cries of pain. The air itself felt heavy, pressing on his chest. This was not a test of strength. It was a test of mind. Other species had sharp logic, advanced brains designed for order. But humans were called impure because they were messy, chaotic, unpredictable. The maze wanted logic. Ethan gave it something else. Instead of following the glowing paths like the others before him, he smashed one of the mirrors with a rock. The reflection cracked, revealing a hidden passage. The judges gasped. The crowd shouted in anger, "This is cheating." He broke the test, but Ethan kept moving, using instinct instead of rules. He did not try to solve the puzzle. He bent it. He broke it. He made his own way. Minutes later, he stumbled out of the maze covered in cuts, breathing hard but alive. The alien judges leaned forward, whispering among themselves. This is not possible. The human should have failed. No human has ever come this far, but Ethan was not finished. The third chamber waited. The door opened with a hiss, revealing a pit of sand and stone. Something moved beneath the ground. Something large. Ethan stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the arena floor. His eyes narrowed, his fists clenched. He whispered only 2 words to himself. Bring it. And the ground exploded. The crowd screamed as a massive creature rose from the sand. Its body was covered in armored plates, its jaws lined with rows of teeth. It towered above Ethan, ready to crush him in a single strike. The judges smiled again. This would be the end. But Ethan did not run. He did not scream. He simply stared up at the beast, his mind racing, because humans were not the strongest, not the fastest, not the purest, but they had one gift no alien could match, the will to fight when all hope was lost. And this was only the beginning. The arena shook with the roar of the beast. Dust fell from the ceiling as the massive creature thrashed in the sand. Its eyes glowed like burning coals fixed on the lone human who stood before it. The crowd leaned forward in their seats, waiting for the moment of failure. To them, this was not a fight. It was execution. Watch closely, one alien whispered. The human will not last more than a breath. But Ethan Kane stood his ground. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths, but his legs did not shake. He had already survived the impossible bridge. He had already broken the maze. Now the test had revealed its true face. This was not about purity. This was not about proving worth. It was about making sure humans always failed. The creature lunged. Its claws tore into the sand where Ethan had stood just moments before. The human rolled to the side, the heat of the beast's breath brushing past his skin. He looked around quickly. The pit was bare. No weapons, no tools, no way out. It was a trap. The other species always had weapons placed within reach. Spears for the hunters, energy blades for the machines, wings for the flyers. But Ethan had nothing. The judges had stripped him of every chance. They wanted him to die. They wanted the crowd to laugh at his failure. Ethan wiped blood from a cut on his forehead and smiled bitterly. Figures. The beast circled him, slow and patient. It was not just an animal. Its movements were guided as if trained. Another cruel trick of the judges. From their thrones above, the alien rulers whispered to each other. The human has lasted too long. We must end this before the crowd begins to question. One judge raised a clawed hand, pressing a hidden control. The beast's eyes flared brighter, its movement suddenly sharper. It had been enhanced, made faster, stronger, more brutal. The fight was not fair. It was never fair. Ethan crouched, low, his eyes never leaving the monster. He felt the shift. He saw the change. The test was alive, twisting itself against him. For a moment, he almost laughed. This was exactly what humans were used to. The universe never gave them fair chances. Their history was nothing but impossible wars, harsh winters, starving nights, and battles against stronger foes. And yet, somehow humanity always survived. The beast lunged again, snapping its jaws. Ethan dove aside, grabbing a chunk of broken stone from the ground. It was sharp on one end. Crude, heavy, but better than nothing. The crowd jeered. Pathetic weapon. Stone against steel? Foolish human. But Ethan gripped it tighter. Humans had once hunted with stones. They had once ruled their world with fire and sticks. Technology was not their strength. Will was. The fight raged across the pit. The beast struck and Ethan dodged. His body burned with exhaustion, but his mind stayed sharp. He began to notice patterns, small hesitations in the monster's movement, tiny weaknesses in its armored hide. The judges watched, growing restless. He should be dead. Why does he still move? This is not how the test was written. Because Ethan was not following their script. He was writing his own. Minutes stretched into eternity. Ethan's clothes were torn, his arms bruised, his face streaked with blood and sweat. Yet his eyes still burned with fire. At last, he saw his chance. When the beast lunged one final time, jaws wide, Ethan drove the stone shard into the soft flesh of its eye. The creature roared in agony, thrashing wildly. Ethan held on, pushing deeper, refusing to let go. The arena shook with the sound. The sand turned red. And then, silence. The beast collapsed, its body trembling once before falling still. Ethan rolled, free, gasping for air. His hands were covered in blood, his weapon shattered, but he was alive. The crowd did not cheer. They did not clap. They sat frozen, staring at the impossible. A human had survived a trial designed only for death. The judges whispered harshly, their voices filled with fear. This cannot continue. The other species will begin to doubt. He must fail in the next stage. They did not care about truth. They did not care about fairness. They cared only about control. The purity test was not a measure of worth. It was a cage built to keep humans down. And for the first time, the cage had cracked. Ethan stood slowly, every muscle screaming in pain. His chest rose and fell, but his spirit did not break. He looked up at the thrones where the judges sat, and for a brief moment his eyes locked with theirs. He did not speak. He did not need to. The message was clear. You rigged the game. But I am still here. The gate opened again, leading to the fourth chamber. The crowd watched in silence as Ethan limped forward, his body broken, but his will unshaken. Each step echoed through the arena like a drumbeat. Step, step, step. The purity test had been rigged from the start, but now, for the first time in history, a human was breaking the rules, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The gate shut behind him with a low, metallic roar. The sound echoed in Ethan's ears like a warning. You should not be here. You should already be dead. The chamber ahead glowed with shifting light. The walls rose high and curved inward, forming a strange dome of glass and steel. Symbols flashed across the surface. Alien runes, flickering patterns moving faster and faster until they blurred. This was not a place of strength. This was a place of mind. The judges leaned forward in their thrones, their voices cold. This is where the human will fail. His kind has no discipline. Their thoughts are chaos. Their instincts are wild. The chamber of logic had ended many trials. It was built for pure minds, species who lived with order, precision, and perfect memory. To pass, one had to solve puzzles of impossible design, follow paths of flawless reason. And humans? Humans were famous for breaking rules instead of following them. Ethan stepped into the dome, the lights reflecting in his bloodied face. His breathing was ragged. His body screamed with pain, but his eyes stayed sharp. The wall shifted, forming a giant puzzle of glowing tiles. A voice spoke, cold and mechanical. Align the patterns. Error is failure. Failure is death. The floor cracked open, showing rivers of molten light beneath. If Ethan chose wrong, if he stepped in the wrong place, he would fall into the burning core. The crowd began to murmur again. Now it ends. No human can solve the chamber. Ethan studied the flashing tiles. Shapes appeared, disappeared, reformed into strange sequences. The alien puzzle was like a language he was never meant to read. His lips curled in a faint smile. Figures. He remembered school back on Earth. Numbers had never been his strong point. Equations made him restless. But when things broke, when machines jammed, when tools failed, Ethan always found a way. Not with logic, not with rules, with something else. Instinct. He crouched low, touching one of the glowing tiles. It was warm under his hand, pulsing like a living heart. He pressed down, and the shape shifted. A new path appeared ahead, jagged and uneven. The crowd gasped. He does not even understand the sequence. He is moving blindly. But Ethan was not blind. He was watching carefully. He noticed the small flickers, the tiny hesitations, in the puzzle's rhythm. He felt the way the energy pulsed under his skin. He was not solving the puzzle, he was reading it. Step by step he moved across the tiles. His hands brushed the walls, his ears tuned to every sound. When a tile vibrated wrong, he avoided it. When the light pulsed too slow, he leapt past. It was not science. It was not reason. It was instinct, raw and human. The judges grew restless. This is impossible. He is not following the path. He is making his own. Ethan kept moving. Sweat dripped into his eyes. His heart thundered. Once, twice, he nearly slipped. Once, a tile beneath him collapsed, sending a wave of heat across his legs. But he rolled forward, skin burning, refusing to stop. Finally, after what felt like hours, he touched the far wall. The dome flickered, the lights dimmed, and the voice spoke again. Trial complete. Proceed. The crowd sat in silence. For the third time, the human had passed. Not through strength, not through logic, but through something no alien race understood. One of the younger spectators whispered the word for the first time. Instinct. The judges slammed their hands on the armrests of their thrones. This cannot continue. The crowd begins to doubt the purity law. Silence them, silence this human. But Ethan could not hear their rage. He leaned against the wall, breathing hard, his body near collapse. Yet a small grin played on his lips, because he knew what they did not. Humans had always survived by instinct. On Earth, they had hunted beasts with nothing but sticks. They had crossed oceans without knowing what lay beyond. They had stepped onto fire, onto storm, onto darkness, and they had survived. It was not purity. It was not perfection. It was chaos. And chaos was power. The fourth gate opened with a hiss, revealing another chamber. This one was darker, filled with jagged rocks and sharp shadows. Somewhere inside, something hissed, low and threatening. Ethan wiped the blood from his face. His body begged him to stop. His bones ached. His cuts burned. But his mind whispered, "Keep going." He looked back once toward the crowd high above. Thousands of alien eyes stared down at him, some mocking, some fearful, some, just a few, awed. For the first time he saw it, a flicker of doubt in their gaze, a question none had dared ask before. What if the humans were not weak? What if the test had been wrong all along? Ethan turned back toward the dark chamber. His shadow stretched before him as he stepped into the unknown. The crowd held its breath. The judges tightened their claws. The purity test was crumbling. The human had not only survived, he had broken its meaning. And deep inside, the galaxy began to whisper the truth. Humans were not pure, but humans were dangerous. The chamber of shadows swallowed Ethan whole. Jagged rocks jutted upward like broken teeth. The air was heavy with dust, and every breath burned his lungs. Somewhere in the darkness, something moved. Slow, crawling, hunting. The gate slammed shut behind him, sealing the human alone inside. The crowd leaned forward, eager for his death. For generations, they had watched humans fail. It was tradition. It was certainty. But tonight was different. Tonight, the human had survived 3 chambers already. Tonight, the whispers of doubt began. At first, the voices were soft. How is he still alive? No human has ever made it this far. Could it be luck? Others shook their heads. Luck does not kill beasts. Luck does not break the chamber of logic. The alien judges scowled, their glowing eyes burning with anger. Their law was clear. Humans were impure, unworthy, beneath the stars. And yet, this one man kept walking forward. They had designed the test to crush him. They had made every path unfair, and still, he was alive. Inside the chamber, Ethan crouched low, his ears straining. The sound came again, a scrape of claws against stone, a hiss like steam escaping a broken pipe. From the shadows, the creature, emerged. It was long and thin, with skin like black glass. Its many eyes glowed faintly red, reflecting the dim light. Rows of spines ran down its back, and its tail lashed like a whip. The crowd roared in delight. "The hunter! He cannot survive this. The human's body is too weak. He will be torn apart." The alien species knew the creature well. It was bred for the test, designed to hunt and kill anything that entered its chamber. It had never failed. Ethan gritted his teeth. His body was already broken, but his mind sharpened. He watched the way the creature moved, the way its tail twitched before it struck, the way its eyes blinked in rhythm. Most would panic. Most would try to run. Ethan did not, because humans had always hunted hunters. The fight was brutal. The creature struck fast, faster than Ethan's eyes could follow. Its tail sliced stone like butter. Its claws ripped through the air with deadly precision. Ethan moved by instinct, ducking, rolling, grabbing shards of broken rock to shield himself. Pain tore across his skin, blood dripping down his arm. But still, he pressed on. Then he saw it. Every time the creature lunged, it left its chest unguarded for a fraction of a second. A small gap, invisible to most. But humans had always been good at seeing weakness, finding the crack in the armor, the flaw in the wall. Ethan grabbed a jagged spear of stone. When the beast lunged again, he stepped into the strike instead of away. The crowd gasped. With a roar, Ethan drove the stone into the creature's chest. It screamed, thrashing, its tail smashing the walls. The dome shook. Dust fell like rain. Ethan held tight, refusing to let go. He twisted the stone deeper until the creature's movements slowed, then stilled. The silence was deafening. The crowd did not cheer. For the first time, they were not mocking, they were not laughing, they were staring. One alien whispered, "He killed it." Another said, "Impossible." And another, "No human should live through this." The whispers spread, growing, louder. Doubt began to bloom like fire. What if the test is not fair? What if the law is wrong? What if humans are more than we believed? The judges shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their claws dug into their thrones. For the first time, the power of their ancient law trembled. One judge hissed, "Silence the crowd." Another whispered, "It is too late. They have seen." Ethan staggered forward, blood dripping from his wounds. His chest heaved, but his eyes still burned with fire. He looked up toward the seats above. Thousands of alien eyes stared back at him, some filled with fear, some with hatred. But among them, a few with respect. He had saved one alien earlier in the maze, dragging them from a collapsing path when he could have let them die. That memory now echoed. For the first time, the crowd began to question, why would a human help? The answer was simple. Humans were not bound by the cold laws of purity. They were bound by something else, something the aliens had forgotten long ago: choice, compassion, instinct to protect. A ripple spread through the arena. The alien spectators whispered to one another, no longer certain of their beliefs. Some even clapped softly at first, then louder. It was not many, but it was enough. The sound struck the judges like a blade. "This cannot continue," one growled. "The human is turning them," another hissed. "If he reaches the final chamber, the law itself may shatter." The gate opened again, the fifth chamber waiting beyond. Ethan wiped his face, smeared with blood and dust, and stepped forward. Every step he took now echoed in the hearts of the crowd. Every breath was a challenge to the system that had ruled them for ages. And though the judges still glared with hatred, though they whispered of ways to end him, they could not silence the truth anymore. Because tonight, in the grand arena of the galaxy, the crowd had turned. They no longer saw a weak human. They no longer saw impurity. They saw a fighter. They saw a survivor. They saw something their test could not measure, and that was far more dangerous than any beast. The fifth gate opened with a sound like thunder. A rush of hot air spilled into the arena, carrying the stench of fire and blood. The chamber beyond was darker than any before. The walls were jagged, twisted metal rising like the ribs of a dead giant. The crowd hushed. They knew this place. Few had ever seen it. Fewer had survived it. This was not just another trial. This was the breaking point. Here, even the strongest races had fallen. Here, pride and strength meant nothing. Here, the purity test revealed its cruelest face. Ethan stepped inside, his body broken, his clothes torn, his skin marked with cuts and bruises. Each breath felt like fire. His legs trembled, but he forced them to move. The gate slammed shut behind him. The silence was heavy, pressing against his ears. Then a low rumble rolled through the chamber. The ground shook. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Something was waking. The creature that rose from the shadows was unlike anything Ethan had faced before. It was massive, taller than the arena walls. Its skin was armored with jagged plates, each one glowing faintly red. Its eyes were pits of fire, its breath a storm of heat. The crowd gasped as the beast stretched its wings, blocking the dim light of the chamber. Its roar shook the entire arena, a sound so deep it rattled bones. One alien whispered, "The Breaker." Another said, "No species survives this trial." The judges smiled coldly. Now the human dies. Ethan stared up at the monster, his chest heaving. His arms hung heavy, his blood dripping into the sand. For a moment, the weight of it all crushed him. His body screamed for rest, for surrender. His mind whispered that he could not win. He closed his eyes, and in the darkness he remembered. The nights on Earth when storms tore apart his home, but his people rebuilt. The winters where food was gone, but families shared what little they had. The wars where humans stood against stronger foes, yet refused to fall. Humanity was not about winning easily. Humanity was about refusing to stop. The beast lunged, jaws, wide claws slicing through the air. Ethan dove aside, rolling hard against the stone. Pain shot through his ribs, but he kept moving. He scrambled to his feet and grabbed a broken piece of metal from the ground. It was dull, heavy, barely sharp, but to a human, anything could be a weapon. The crowd roared as the beast struck again, its claws smashing stone into dust. Ethan ducked and swung the metal shard, sparks flying off the creature's armor. It barely left a scratch. The judges laughed. Pathetic. He cannot even wound it. This is the end. But Ethan did not stop. He struck again. And again. Every hit was useless, yet he swung harder. Blood dripped into his eyes, sweat burned his skin, but he kept fighting, because that was what humans did. They fought long after reason said, "Stop." The beast's tail lashed out, smashing into Ethan's chest. He flew across the chamber, slamming into the wall. The shard of metal clattered from his hand. His vision blurred, the world spinning. The crowd gasped. "It's over." Ethan coughed, spitting blood onto the stone. He tried to rise, but his arms shook, too weak. For a moment his body refused him. He fell back, staring up at the ceiling. His chest rose and fell shallowly. He could hear the beast's heavy steps as it moved closer, its growl deep and final. And then he smiled. The human mind was strange. Where others saw death, Ethan saw possibility. He remembered the cracks in the floor from when the beast had first roared. He remembered the way the chamber shook under its weight. The beast was stronger, faster, untouchable. But maybe it wasn't unbreakable. Not if the chamber itself could be turned against it. With a groan, Ethan forced himself to stand. His ribs ached. His legs barely held him, but his eyes locked on the creature with new fire. He staggered forward, arms spread, taunting it. "Come on." His voice was weak but steady. "Come on." The beast roared and charged, the ground trembling. With each step, Ethan ran, not away but toward one of the tall, broken pillars of stone. At the last second he dove aside. The beast crashed into the pillar. The chamber shook. The pillar cracked, then fell with a thunderous crash, smashing across the beast's back. The crowd erupted. The creature thrashed, trying to rise. Ethan limped forward, grabbed the shard of metal again, and leapt onto the beast's wounded side. His arms screamed in pain, but he drove the shard into the crack left by the fallen pillar. The beast roared, flailing. Ethan held on, pressing deeper. His teeth gritted. The crowd screamed. The judges rose from their thrones in fury. And then, at last, the beast collapsed. The ground shook as its massive body fell still. Silence filled the arena. Thousands of eyes watched as Ethan stood atop the fallen monster, his body broken, his chest heaving, but his spirit unbroken. For the first time in history, a human had passed the breaking point. The crowd began to cheer. Not all, not even most, but enough. Their voices rose, echoing across the chamber. Human. Human. The judges' eyes burned with fury. Their test, their law, their power, it was slipping away. And Ethan, though he could barely stand, looked up at them and whispered, so low only he could hear, "You wanted me broken, but humans don't break." The chamber was silent. Dust hung in the air like smoke after a battlefield. Ethan stood over the fallen beast, his body trembling, every breath sharp and ragged. His clothes were torn, his skin smeared with blood and dirt, yet his eyes still burned with that human fire. The crowd had no words. For the first time in generations, the arena was not laughing. It was not mocking, it was watching. A human had survived the breaking point. The judges sat frozen, their glowing eyes narrow with fury. One slammed a clawed hand on the throne. This cannot continue. He has twisted the test. He must be stopped, but they had no choice. The law of the purity test bound them as much as it bound the contestants, and Ethan had not fallen. By their own rules, he had earned the right to face the final chamber. The gate opened once more. A low hum filled the arena. The air shimmered with heat. The last chamber revealed itself, not of stone or sand, but of steel and fire. Machines whirred, gears turned, sparks rained down from the ceiling like falling stars. This was no simple trial. This was war. The chamber of conquest. The place where civilizations proved they had the right to command. The crowd whispered nervously. No human has ever reached this stage. He will not last a moment. He will be erased. Ethan limped forward. His body wanted to collapse, but his will pushed him on. He stepped into the chamber and the gate closed with a crash. The machines came alive. From the walls, weapons unfolded, spinning blades, beams of burning energy, walls that shifted like moving mazes. From the floor, armored drones rose, glowing, red eyes fixed on him. It was an army. The judges smiled again, certain of victory. Now he will see the truth. Humanity is nothing. Chaos cannot conquer order. The drones advanced, weapons clicking into place. Ethan raised his shard of metal. It was dull, chipped, barely more than scrap. Against an army, it was useless. For the first time, doubt crept into the crowd again. Could even this human survive? Ethan tightened his grip. His chest rose and fell, steadying his breath. His body was weak, but his mind was alive. Humans did not win wars by strength alone. They won by being clever, by being stubborn, by refusing to play the game by its rules. If the test was about purity, then Ethan would fight with impurity. The first drone lunged, firing a beam of light. Ethan rolled aside, the heat grazing his shoulder. He hurled his shard of metal, not at the drone, but at the ceiling above it. The shard struck loose a shower of sparks, raining down onto exposed wires. The machine convulsed, its system shorting out and collapsed in smoke. The crowd gasped. Ethan grinned weakly. That's one. The battle raged. Drones swarmed from every direction. Ethan ducked, rolled, grabbed broken pieces of steel from the floor and hurled them into gears, jamming the machines. He tricked one drone into blasting another, dove aside so two collided into each other. It was messy. It was chaotic. It was not the clean order the judges had designed, but it worked. One by one, the machines fell, not to strength, not to purity, but to human chaos. The judges grew restless. This is wrong. He is not following the test. He is changing it. And they were right. Ethan was not playing their game anymore. He was making his own. At last, only one machine remained. It was the largest of all. A towering war construct, its body armed with blades, cannons, and shields of glowing energy. The ground trembled as it stepped forward. The crowd fell silent. The arena held its breath. Ethan stood across from it, bloodied and exhausted. He had no weapons left, no strength left, but he still had his mind. The giant machine raised its cannon, charging with blinding light. Ethan staggered, barely holding himself upright. And then, he smiled. He remembered something simple, something from Earth. How a hunter could trap a beast not by strength, but by letting it destroy itself. The machine fired. Ethan dove aside, the beam striking the wall. The chamber shook. The wall cracked. Again the machine fired, and again Ethan moved. The beam tore through more walls, collapsing gears, breaking the floor. Sparks and fire spread through the chamber. The crowd shouted in disbelief. "He's not fighting it. He's making it fight itself." At last, the giant raised its cannon for one final strike. Ethan staggered backward, leading it to the chamber's core, a mass of glowing energy, pulsing like a heart. The machine fired. The beam struck the core. The chamber erupted in fire and light. The crowd screamed as the explosion shook the arena. Flames tore through the chamber. Machines shattered into dust. For a moment, nothing could be seen but smoke and fire. The judges leaned forward, eager. He is gone. He must be gone. But when the smoke cleared, a figure stood, burned, broken, barely breathing, but alive. Ethan Kane. The arena fell silent. The human had not just survived. He had changed the game. He had taken their rules, their order, their purity, and shattered it with chaos, with instinct, with will. The crowd erupted, voices shouting in every tongue. He defeated the final chamber. The human has conquered. The test. The law is broken. The judges stood in fury, but their words were drowned by the thunder of thousands. For the first time in history, a human had passed the purity test. Ethan fell to his knees, barely conscious. His body had reached its limit, but his spirit still burned. He had shown them the truth. Humans were not pure. Humans were not perfect. But humans could adapt. Humans could survive. Humans could win. And in that moment, the galaxy began to change. Fire had died down, but smoke still curled through the chamber. Broken machines lay in pieces. Gears scattered across the ground like the bones of fallen giants. And in the center, on his knees, was Ethan Kane. His body was finished. His ribs ached. With every breath, his hands shook raw and bloodied. His vision blurred at the edges, but he was alive. Alive where no human had ever been before. The gate opened behind him, the final passage leading back into the grand arena. Slowly, painfully, Ethan rose to his feet. He staggered forward, one step at a time, until at last he stood in the center of the arena floor once more. Tens of thousands of alien eyes stared down at him. The silence was heavy, thick, filled with shock. For the first time in history, a human had passed every chamber of the purity test. The judges sat on their high thrones, their glowing eyes burning with rage. "This cannot be," one hissed. "The test was rigged," another spat. "He should have failed." But the crowd had seen. They had watched each step. They had seen the bridge, the maze, the beast, the shadows, the breaking point, the final chamber. They had seen the human fall and rise again until even the impossible was broken. The law of purity no longer felt unshakable. From the lower rows of the arena, a voice shouted. It was not loud, but it carried. "Human." Another voice followed. "Human," and then more. Dozens. Hundreds. Thousands. Soon the arena thundered with a chant that shook the very walls. "Human! Human! Human!" The judges rose in fury, their claws sparking with power. "Silence them! End this farce! The law must hold." But the crowd no longer listened. The law had cracked. The truth had spread. Because if one human could do this, if one broken man could shatter the impossible, what could the rest of his kind do? Ethan lifted his head. His voice was weak but steady. You called us impure. You called us weak. You rigged your test to make us fail." He paused, every word echoing in the silence. "But you forgot something. Humans don't quit. We fight. We adapt. We survive. And when the game is rigged," his eyes narrowed, a faint grin on his bloodied lips, "we change the game." The arena erupted. The chant grew deafening, rolling like thunder. Species that had once mocked humans now shouted their name. Species that had once believed in purity now doubted everything. The judges slammed their thrones. Their voices drowned in the storm. For the first time in thousands of years, their control was slipping. The purity test had been their weapon, their chain of power. And tonight, a single human had broken it. Ethan swayed, his body finally giving way. He fell to one knee, his vision fading. But before darkness claimed him, he looked once more at the crowd. He did not see enemies. He did not see rulers. He saw something else. Hope. Not just for himself. Not just for humans. But for the galaxy. Because if the test could be beaten, then the law of purity could be questioned. If the law could be questioned, it could be destroyed, and if it could be destroyed, then no race would ever be called unworthy again. Later, they would speak of Ethan Kane as a legend, the human who broke the test, the impure who proved purity was a lie, the fighter who stood against the galaxy and did not bow. Some would call him a hero. Some would call him a rebel. The judges would call him a danger. But to the common people across the stars, he became something else entirely, a symbol. Whispers spread to every world. A human passed the test. The law is broken. The judges lied. Other species, long oppressed, began to rise. They looked at the cages around them and wondered if they too could break free. The galaxy was changing, and at the center of that change was a single human, bloodied, broken, but unyielding. The arena lights dimmed. The crowd's roar still thundered. The judges sat frozen, trapped by their own rules, their own failure. And Ethan Kane collapsed at last, his body falling into the dust. But his story did not end there, because stories never die when they ignite. A fire in others, and tonight humanity had lit a flame that no one could ever extinguish. Final line, for dramatic delivery. They wanted purity. Instead, they got humanity, and that changed the galaxy forever.